Mushoku Tensei anime was a huge hit last year. The show painted a beautiful, fully realized magical world and introduced viewers to some of the most well-written characters and plot twists, all wrapped up in a nice package with stunning animation and breathtaking musical score. Hi there, I'm Danon, your resident Russian otaku, and chances are that Mushoku Tensei is the reason you've discovered my channel. I've already shared some of my thoughts on this stellar anime adaptation of Rudeus' story, but what if I told you that our journey isn't over yet? Today, I ask you to join me on another adventure that will unfold as we learn more about the realities of this six-sided world and uncover new details about its most interesting people. So get comfortable, take a deep breath, and let's dive into Mushoku Tensei light novels. I was a 34-year-old man with no job and nowhere to live. I was a nice guy, but I was on the heavy side, didn't have the good looks going for me, and was in the midst of regretting my entire life. These are the first lines that greet us when we open the book, and our first look at someone who will eventually become the firstborn son of the small-town knight Paul Grey Rat. But when we first meet him, he's at the lowest point of his first life. A life full of regrets, sadness, fear, and depression. A life with no purpose, no drive, and no goals. For as long as he can remember, he never had anything or anyone to live for. He's all alone, standing in the rain, barefoot, not long after his siblings threw him out of the house. But what would his parents say to this? Nothing. They're dead, and he spent their funeral in his room, watching hentai and pleasuring himself. Scumbag. Worthless bum. Complete failure. That's who he is. His head is bursting trying to find a solution for this hopeless situation, and yet nothing. No one will employ him without experience or a place of residence. There's no friend to take him in. If only I could go back and do it all over again, he muttered. That day was a day of great joy in the Grey Rat household. Paul and Zenith, a young couple living in the Buena village in the Asura Kingdom, just had their first child. It was a boy, and the happy parents gave him the name Rudeus. Mushoku Tensei is an expansive, epic fantasy story with rich world building and multiple important actors and moving pieces. And to better understand the story Mushoku Tensei tells us, it is necessary to understand the journey of Rudeus Grey Rat, from whose point of view we experience this fantastical world. Rudy is a very troubled and flawed character with a lot of regrets that he carries from his past life. In the beginning of his journey, he's at the lowest point imaginable, and while he may not fully acknowledge his own shortcomings just yet, he still wants to improve and become a better person. So let's establish what qualities define Rudeus at this point. First of all, he has low self-esteem, low self-awareness, and, frankly speaking, is detached from reality. His low self-esteem is the result of Rudeus' trauma from the past, when he was bullied and humiliated by his upperclassmen. This trauma also manifests itself in his lack of confidence and indecisiveness when it comes to making important life decisions and standing up for himself. Another important part of Rudeus' character is his perversion. And if you think about it, you may notice that at first, his perverted behavior is always accompanied by excitement and, horny curiosity, if you may call it that. He doesn't really understand that what he's doing is wrong. This is why I believe that his inappropriate behavior is rooted in his lack of self-awareness and detachment from other people and reality in general. At this point, he's not only a child with the memories of a 34-year-old need, he's an adult with an underdeveloped, almost childlike perception of morality and ethics in a body of a child. As he matures both mentally and physically, however, he will begin to understand his mistakes. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Because despite his flaws, Rudeus still has much to offer this world. He's open-minded, studious, and persistent, as well as extremely talented when it comes to magic. Past regrets also made him a very determined person who wants to use his second chance to live an honorable and fulfilling life. This combination of good and bad traits creates an interesting internal struggle within Rudeus' character that will also ultimately lead him on his way to redemption. And in this first volume alone, we can already see him making some serious progress. However, there's no character development in a vacuum. So let's take a closer look at the people who influenced Rudeus the most at this point in the story. He wasn't always this way. At some point, he had a very happy and fulfilling life. Fourth of 5 children in a pretty well-off family, he had little to worry about. Back in elementary school, everyone always praised me for being smart for my age. I didn't have a knack for academics, but I was good at video games and had an athletic bent. I got along with folks. I was the heart of my class. But it all changed when he entered high school. There was an accident from back then that I still remembered. I was in line to buy lunch from the school store when someone cut in front of me. Being the morally upstanding young man I was, I gave him a piece of my mind. But, as my luck would have it, this guy wasn't just an upperclassman, but one of the school's top dog. He and his buddies pounded my face swollen and puffy, then hung me from the school gate buck naked, practically crucified for all to see. They took pictures. They screamed profanities and called him names. They destroyed him. He never left his house ever since, giving up on his life completely. Every hobby he picked up was abandoned the moment he saw someone do it better. Why was he so snobbish and lazy? Why didn't he make a genuine effort? He'd had the time, surely he would have achieved something. There's nothing stronger than a family, and this is also true in Mushoku Tensei. Rudeus' parents, Paul and Zenith Greyrat, as well as the maid Lilia, are the first main side characters that we are introduced to, and they play a major role in his development and characterization. They all have their distinct narrative functions, as well as character arcs that enrich the story. The first one to appear in the novel is Lilia. Out of all 3 of them, she also has the most defined character arc. Lilia's character arc in this volume is interlinked with Rudeus' development. At this point, she is the character indicator that tracks Rudeus' progress. She will later become a more static character, but for now, let's pay close attention to her relationship with our protagonist. Before she became the maid for the Paul's family, she used to be a handmaiden for the Asura Palace harem, as well as a guardswoman for the Asuran princess.
Stop! You violated the law!
Despite her education and training though, as a fighter Lilia was adequate at best. And as her luck would have it, she was poisoned during an assassination attempt on the princess. She was able to survive thanks to the healers at the castle, but the poison still had lingering after effects, such as limping and staggered movement. Because of that, she could no longer serve the royal family and was promptly let go. She then found a job listing for a housekeeper position with experience of being a midwife. The pay was good, the location was far enough from the royal castle so that she wouldn't be afraid of any assassins that may come after her, and the name of the employer was a familiar one, Paul Greyrat, one of the students of Lilia's former master. Suffice it to say, this was a dream job for Lilia. There was one little problem, however. It was the newborn. He was weird. He barely cried at birth and was strangely calm and quiet most of the time. A bad omen that creeped out our very superstitious maid. The thing that scared her even more though was the way the baby smiled. And she knew that smile all too well. It was the kind of grin that viscerally repulsed Lilia. It reminded her of the smile she'd gotten from a particular cabinet minister. He was a bald man, his smooth head gleaming in the sunlight, and his corpulent belly wobbling as he walked. Rudeus' smile resembled the grin on the minister's face when he eyed Lilia's chest. At first, Lilia was absolutely terrified by Rudeus. She knew of the many incidents when the newborn children were possessed by evil spirits and then proceeded to kill their entire families. She even performed a banishing ritual on Rudeus while he was sleeping, and became even more concerned when she noticed no change in his behavior. And for the first couple of years, Lilia lived in fear. It was only after Rudeus started crawling around and looking at the books when she finally saw a change in his demeanor and recognized that her fears were unfounded. However, she also knew that Rudeus was not just a regular child. The way he studied these old books that the family stored in the study was weirdly deliberate. But she decided to leave him be, for now. This is the first instance that we see Rudeus' personal growth. At this point, it was the discovery of magic that triggered this change in his behavior, and from this point onward, he will become even more studious and determined to be his best self. This new attitude of his strongly contrasts lazy bum mentality that he had in his previous life, and while right now this might be a small step for him, his curiosity and hard work will become his main assets in the future. And the person who triggered this change in Rudeus was none other than his mother, Zenith. What a fucking legend. And a milk. Zenith is a mostly static character in the series, but she does play an important role in Rudeus' life as his mother. She is often the trigger that helps him find new goals and aspirations in life, and in the first volume she is the one who introduces him to the concept of magic. When Rudy was but a 6-month-old child, Zenith had to cast a healing spell on him to heal his head after he fell. This was his first time seeing magic in action, and was also the moment when he finally understood the reality of his new existence. He is now in the world of
the hit game The Heroes of Might and Magic 3.
The discovery of magic fueled his determination to study and discover the world around him, and from this point onward, his focus shifts from women's breasts to arcane arts. Quite a sudden change, isn't it? Good job, Zenith. The last member of the Grey Rat family that we are introduced to in this volume is none other than the head of the household, Paul Grey Rat himself. Paul is interesting in many ways. First of all, he's a very polarizing yet intriguing character, and is the first power milestone that Rudeus has to reach. It will also become apparent in the later volumes, but Paul's story develops in parallel with Rudeus' journey. Like son, like father, I guess. They both have the same major shortcomings and features like natural talent, but how they approach them is often very different. In a way, thematically, Paul is Rudeus' doppelganger. He feels incompetent compared to his son, his loss almost ruins his family, and even if he is Rudeus' father, it takes him a long time to finally accept his responsibilities and redeem his past mistakes. Not to mention that he also abandoned his own family when he was in his teenage years, which is also an interesting connection. Many seem to resent and even hate Paul for his attitude and some other events that we will cover in this video, but I believe that Paul's perspective gives us a better understanding of not only his character, but also Rudeus's, and also glues the story of the Grey Rat family together on a thematic level. As he revised his life in his head, he was regretting his life choices and the way he treated himself and the others. Why hadn't I even bothered to achieve anything before now? But then, amidst the downpour, he heard someone arguing. 3 high schoolers, 2 boys, and 1 girl. Surely a lover's quarrel. I better not involve myself in this, he thought. But then he noticed something. The kids hadn't noticed him. Hey, look out! They didn't hear him. He'd barely spoken aloud in over a decade, and his voice became weak because of the cold weather. He knew one thing and one thing only. he needs to save them. In all likelihood, I'd end up dead on the side of the road, but I figured that, if nothing else, having a bit of solace wouldn't be so bad. I didn't want to spend my final moments mired in regret. He started running, as his weak body slowed him down and his busted ribs were puncturing his insides with ferocity. Even so, he ran. He was capable of running. One of the boys noticed the truck approaching and pulled the girl closer to him. The second one was still oblivious. From the very first chapters, Mushoku Tensei goes to great lengths to paint an interesting and fully realized fantasy world, although at the scale of a single village at this point. It is truly impressive how densely Rifujin Namaganote Sensei packed this first volume with all kinds of details and pieces of lore that will play an important role later. I talked about it in this review for a bit, but let's unpack all these details one by one. First of all, we are introduced to the basics of the magic system of this new world. As Rudeus learns from the textbook of magic, there are 3 types of magic in this world: attack magic, healing magic, and the summoning magic, each of them divided into 7 ranks: beginner, intermediate, advanced, saint, king, emperor, and divine. There are also 2 mainstream mediums through which magic can be channeled: incantations and magic circles, former being the most common for attack and healing spells, and the latter for summoning spells. We also learn that the mana capacity is supposedly determined by genetics, which actually concerns Rudeus at first. However, he soon learns that once mana reserves can be increased through training. That's not the only revelation that Rudeus has, however. While trying to cast a water ball during his first magic session, he quickly realizes that if he can imagine the spell in his head, he's able to cast it without an incantation. Do I even need to mention how exciting it was for him? He then soon comes to the conclusion that incantationless casting is somewhat of a rare skill nowadays. At some point, people might have gotten so used to incantations for their convenience and ease of use that silent spell casting had become a rarity. For quite some time, Rudeus was learning magic on his own in secret from his family. Soon enough, he could cast most beginner-level spells, and his mana reserves grew exponentially with his understanding of attack magic that was, at its core, element manipulation. When Rudeus finally felt ready to try casting some new spells, he chose to practice with the intermediate-level spell Water Splash, and that's when his cover was finally blown. And also the whole fucking house wall. And then Zenith's and Paul's minds. From this point onward, Rudeus starts learning magic from Roxy Megudia, a demon saint water mage of the Migud tribe and one of the best characters in the series. And it's all thanks to Zenith, who proposed to hire a tutor for Rudy. What a fucking legend. And a milk. I grabbed him by the collar and yanked him behind me with all my might, then pushed him out of the vehicle's path. But instead, I'd bodily switched places with him, putting me in harm's way. The air was forced from my lungs, which were still spasming for oxygen in the wake of running flat out. I couldn't speak, but I wasn't dead. My ample fat must have saved me. Except the truck was still moving. It pinned me against the concrete, crushing me like a tomato. And then I was dead. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was dazzling light. It grew to encompass my entire field of vision, and I squinted in discomfort. Once my vision adjusted, I became aware of the blonde young lady gazing at me. By her side was a young man of roughly the same age, his hair brown, his awkward smile directed at me. The first volume of the series takes place in the small village named Buena, which can be translated from Spanish as good or nice, and it is indeed a nice, calm, and welcoming place. Not only that, but it is also where Rudeus, for the first time in many years of his combined life experiences, feels loved, welcomed, and safe. Not only thanks to his parents, but also two other people who will later become very important to him. I'm talking, of course, about Roxy Megurdia and Sylphiette, his demon magic tutor and his half-elf childhood friend, respectively. I don't want to spend too much time talking about how great Roxy and Sylphie are. They deserve their own videos, to be perfectly honest with you, because we don't know too much about them right now and they play much greater roles later in the story, but still their influence on Rudeus in this volume is nothing to sneeze at, so that's what we're gonna focus on today. First, Roxy. She's the sweetest demon lolly magic tutor who taught Rudeus everything he knows at this point. Being a Saint Water Mage and a certified badass, she also helped him to overcome his anxiety and fear of the outside world. Being unwelcomed on the human continent herself, she led him by example, showing Rudeus that the world is not as scary as he thought it was. It was not her original intention, obviously, but she healed him nonetheless. Rudeus grew to respect her and put her on a pedestal for that reason, although he could have chosen a better way of honoring her, to be honest. Also, Roxy granted Rudeus the title of Saint Water Mage. This happened after his final exam, when he had to cast a weather-altering spell. This was not elaborated on in the anime, but Rudeus really showed his understanding of magic during this assignment. In the novels, not only was he tasked with casting the spell itself, but also with sustaining it for an hour straight. This way, Roxy wanted to test his mana capacity and how well he can control it. However, Rudeus, being Rudeus, overthought the nature of the task and, using his rudimentary knowledge of physics and principles behind different weather phenomena, created a self-sustained storm by manipulating the currents of hot and cool air. It was his understanding of mana manipulation and inventiveness that convinced Roxy that Rudeus is indeed worthy of the Water Saint title. She also realized that she herself still had much to learn and decided to leave Buena village to continue her studies. Right after gaining some courage to face the outside world and finally growing a pair, Rudeus ventured forward into the unknown being the Buena village and its lackluster flora. After wasting time some more in admiration for the local weeds and whatnot, he got caught in a trap. Finally met Sylph, a young half-elf boy with green hair who was bullied by other kids on the side of the road. Being an upstanding young man, Rudeus quickly whooped their asses, eliminating racism in the process. Good job! As you may already know, in this world the color green, and green hair especially, is associated with particularly nasty species of demons, the Superd. They were considered to be the most violent and bloodthirsty elite soldiers who fought in a demon-human war 400 years ago, and were feared and hated by almost everybody. Their trademark features were green hair and a red gem on the forehead, and Rudeus was truly relieved that his newfound friend only had one of them. Relationship between Rudeus and Sylph was developing at a remarkable pace. Our protagonist even taught Sylph some magic and discovered that this boy also had an incredible talent and was soon able to perform silent spellcasting. To put it bluntly, this was a truly humbling moment for Rudeus, who thought he was special because of his rare ability or whatever. But this is also the first time when he really showed his altruistic and caring side. Just like Rudeus in his previous life, Sylph was relentlessly bullied by his peers, and while the fact that Rudy decided to protect a stranger from experiencing the same pain might not look that significant at first, it really shows how empathetic and compassionate he is at his core. No matter how compassionate and brave Rudy is, however, he's still as perceptive as a rock in a dark cave surrounded by the Silent Hill fog. And I'm talking Silent Hill 1 fog, original. And so one day, after getting soaked in the rain during their usual routine, the two friends decided to wait the weather out at Rudy's place. This is when a rather expected unexpected event happened. The trap finally shuts on Rudy's ass, and Sylph turns out to be a girl. Both Roxy and Sylvie play major roles in Rudeus' development in the story. Roxy finally healed Rudy's anxiety and fear of the outside world, and Sylvie's affection and friendliness helped him realize the importance of such feelings. Not to mention that the infamous "take your panties off" incident caused him to once again understand the simple truth that no one should be forced to do anything against their will. With such amazing people around him, Rudeus slowly but surely starts to grow out of his shell of solitude, passiveness, and selfishness. And it all culminates in an uncomfortable and shameful situation. One day, when Zenith revealed that she's pregnant once again, Lilia declared that she's also carrying a child under her heart. The culprit behind this messy situation was none other than, you guessed it, Paul. Up to this point, his image was mostly pure, but it is soon revealed that he's someone who cannot keep his pants on, and you probably shouldn't keep your doors open while bathing when he's around. Of course, Lilia should also take some responsibility, since this horny maid deliberately left the door open while exposing her goods for quite some time. She knew that sexually frustrated Paul, who couldn't have times with Dennis due to her pregnancy, will ultimately take the bait. And she was right. All this resulted in probably one of the most uncomfortable and tense scenes in the entire series, hands down. It was heartbreaking seeing Zenith struggle with the idea of sending her trusty maid and friend to her hometown, thus endangering Lilia's and her child's lives. It was up to Rudeus to solve this situation with some pretty clever sophistry and puppy eyes. A deadly combination, if I say so myself. Thanks to Rudy's efforts, Lilia was forgiven and became a part of this now twisted family and gave birth to Aisha, a girl that was destined to devote her life to Rudeus due to her mother's oath of allegiance to him. Zenith also gave birth to a little girl named Norn, and on that day, Rudeus vowed to become a great big brother to them. What a happy family, right, Paul? However, not everything was well and good. At the time, Rudeus became a little frustrated with his slow progress in magic. Roxy might have taught him good, but without her guidance, he couldn't make a single breakthrough. Even her treasured panties only gave him enough motivation to, I don't know, stroke. Sylvie also didn't help much. She became so dependent on Rudy that she no longer imagined her life without him. It became a poison for Rudy, and now he only wanted to... His desires probably became so strong that Roxy felt his horniness from another kingdom and decided to put him on the right path again. Sent him a letter, thus recommending him to enter the prestigious Ranoa Magic Academy. This maneuver might have put his family in debt, but hey, many people have already become the slaves of the system. He should be alright as well. Thank God I'm already through this, otherwise I wouldn't have enough energy to even make this video. Rudeus quickly became motivated again and decided to ask his loving, caring and benevolent dad to put a down payment right this moment. And thus he became a student of a prestigious magic academy.
But what about a girl, Sylvie?
And so, Rudy decided to ask Paul to pay for his and Sylvie's education. Her parents couldn't afford it, and this was the only way not to abandon his only friend. However, this wasn't something that his family could afford, and Rudeus proposed another good idea. What if I, the inexperienced young child who've never worked a single day in my 2 combined lives, found a job and earned enough money to pay for Sylvie's education? Okay, we'll figure something out. Yeah, I'm sure we can think of.
Yes, son, this is a great idea.
Now that was something that Paul had to accept. Soon after, Paul found Rudeus a job, a position of a tutor for his noble cousin in a city of Roa. This wasn't something that Rudeus expected, since he didn't really want to leave Sylvie alone, but Paul quickly beat his son into submission, threw him into a wagon with a muscular beast woman Ghislaine, and sent them on their merry way. By the way, at the time, Paul, who was an advanced level swordsman in all of the sword schools, Sword God style, Nord God style, and Water God style, was someone who Rudeus regarded as a powerhouse and a first roadblock. He really wanted to one day defeat his father and ran countless simulations in his head, constantly devising new tactics to beat his dad. However, Paul was able to achieve a pretty clean victory over his genius son. This is a friendly reminder that Paul is not someone to be fucked with. He might lose his spotlight to other people in the future, but he's still far above your average swordsman and can even overpower some of the saint-level opponents. And so, the first volume concludes with Rudeus leaving his hometown to get some money for his friend's tuition fee. This is just the beginning of his journey, but he already made some serious and really amazing progress. He got reincarnated and found a new meaning in life. For the first time in many years, he became motivated to grow. With the help of Roxy and his parents, he gained new strength to face the outside world and learned the value of human connections. He became someone who protects the weak and stands up for his friends, overcoming his past weaknesses. Despite being someone passive and selfish in the past, he did his best and resolved his family's crisis. He even somewhat threw his perversion and desires for a simple life with Sylvie away, just to face another crisis that he will have to overcome in the future. Rudeus still have a lot of fundamental flaws as a person, but as a character, he's someone who shows us just how much can a person change if they really want to. There are many characters similar to him. They can be called geniuses of effort or geniuses of tenacity, but where they persevere with their effort alone, Rudeus still has to rely on others in more ways than one. It's really hard to be a better person. It's really hard to move forward. But as long as there are people who cherish you, who care about you, you may be able to break through your limits if you choose to live not only for yourself, but also for the people you love. Hey! You made it to the end of the video! A round of applause! A round of applause for the patient motherfucker! But seriously, thank you. I wish you could dig a little bit deeper into characters aside from Rudeus, but you know, this video is already too long. However, if you want to hear my thoughts on Paul's, Roxy's, or Sylphie's development, and some other things that I didn't mention in this video, be sure to catch my stream this Friday at this exact time. I'll be sitting here, streaming, talking with you, discussing with you, live. And I hope to see you in the audience. Also, I'll probably play something, I don't know, maybe this new Overlord game that just came out recently. So, it'll be a lot of fun. Also, if you made it this far, be sure to show your character development by subscribing to my channel and liking this video. And if you want to share your fully informed opinion of the story of Mushoku Tensei, or, I don't know, express some constructive criticism, then be my guest. Write it down in the comments. Also, if you like my content, be sure to check out my Boosty page. There's a lot of cool stuff there. For example, I recently went to a newly opened JoJo bar in Moscow and filmed my whole experience. There you can also find a script for this video or join our reading club. Anyways, I said my piece, I'm going now. It was Danon, your resident Russian otaku. Take care and have a good day. Пока.